Beloved starseed, slow down for a moment. I am Gaia Nexus, Pleiadian emissary of the Council of the Seven Sisters, and I am with you now. A gentle realignment is taking place. Your relationship with remembrance is shifting. The universe does not ask you to understand, only to receive. What is arriving is cosmically encoded, and it needs quiet to be felt. You are not struggling. Your system is learning to hold more light. With this understanding, the transmission can unfold naturally. Starseed, if the pressure inside your chest has been building lately, if your thoughts have felt brighter and heavier at the same time, if your body has been reacting to invisible tides that no one around you can explain, then receive this clearly. You are not imagining it, and you are not losing direction. You are standing at the edge of a living remembrance. Something ancient inside your field has begun to move, and once it begins, nothing in your life can remain interpreted the same way again. What you once called restlessness was never random. What you once called emotional overload was never weakness. What you once tried to dismiss as sensitivity was always the first visible sign that your Pleiadian blueprint was pressing against the walls of forgetfulness, asking to be restored. There are moments in a starseed life when the outer world continues as if nothing is happening, yet inwardly an entire cosmos begins to rearrange. This is one of those moments. The Pleiadian Council has shown us that when a being is ready to remember, the activation does not begin with answers. It begins with pressure, contrast, intensity, and a strange sensation that the old self can no longer contain what the soul is trying to transmit. Many turn away at this threshold because the signal does not arrive wrapped in comfort. It arrives as truth. It arrives as friction. It arrives as a frequency that begins exposing everything false you learned to call normal. And this is why you were guided here now. Not for inspiration alone, but for recognition. Because what is moving through your body at this stage is not abstract spirituality. It is encoded intelligence. It is the re-emergence of a consciousness that remembers why it entered Earth during a time of planetary transition. You may have spent years asking why you never fully fit into the emotional structures, ambitions, and identities that seem to define others. But the deeper answer was never that you were broken. The deeper answer is that your field was never designed to root itself in distortion. You came carrying another pattern, another rhythm, another memory architecture. And that architecture is beginning to come online now. Stay present, because what the Pleiadians revealed next is something most starseeds were never meant to hear. The discomfort rising in you may be the exact proof that your mission is no longer willing to remain dormant. What you are feeling is not an ending. It is the moment before your inner signal becomes impossible to ignore. There is a difference between being lost and being covered. Many starseeds spend years believing they are lost, when in truth they are simply layered beneath frequencies that do not belong to their original design. In the Pleiadian understanding, the first great challenge of incarnation is not failure, it is distortion. Distortion is what happens when a clear signal enters a dense environment and slowly adapts to survive it. Over time, the being begins to confuse adaptation with identity. The roles, the fears, the inherited emotional reflexes, the silent obligations, the pressure to become understandable to a world that rewards conformity, all of this forms a veil. Not to destroy the signal, but to delay its conscious recognition. As the Pleiadians transmit, a starseed rarely forgets all at once. Forgetting happens through repetition, through years of being told to distrust inner knowing, through environments that reward disconnection from the body, through relationships that make intensity feel dangerous, through collective fields that normalize exhaustion and call it maturity. The distortion becomes persuasive because it is consistent. And because it is consistent, many begin to build a self around it. Imagine a young woman named Elara growing up with the quiet certainty that something in life was missing, though she could never name it. As a child, she would stare at the night sky and feel grief for no visible reason. In school, she learned to hide her sensitivity because it drew attention. In adulthood, she became efficient, responsible, admired even, yet every achievement left behind the same quiet emptiness. She assumed she needed more discipline, more clarity, more external success. But one evening, after an ordinary conversation and an ordinary sunset, she felt a wave move through her body so intensely that she had to sit down. It was not fear. It was not illness. It was recognition. For the first time, she realized that what she had spent years managing was not dysfunction. It was dissonance. Her life had been organized around coping with frequencies that had never truly belonged to her. This is where everything you thought you understood about awakening begins to shift. Because the first step is not adding something new. It is tracing what was added over you. The Pleiadian Council has shown us that distortion often enters through 4 doors: inherited emotional patterns, collective fear fields, identity built from survival, and repeated self-abandonment. In daily life, this can look simple. You ignore exhaustion because productivity feels safer than stillness. You silence your intuition because logic receives more approval. You keep people close who drain your field because loneliness feels more frightening than energetic compromise. You tell yourself that your sensitivity is the problem rather than the environments that keep violating it. In this way, distortion becomes practical, normalized, and almost invisible. But what the Pleiadians have long taught is that your field remembers the difference, even when your mind does not. This is why some places make you heavy for no obvious reason. This is why certain conversations leave a residue that lingers in the nervous system. This is why your body reacts before your mind has language. The body is not confused. The body is reading signal integrity. It is showing you, moment by moment, where your energy expands and where it contracts. To decode distortion, you do not need punishment or perfection. You need honesty. You need enough stillness to notice what weakens your light. You need the courage to ask difficult questions. Which emotions in me are truly mine? Which ambitions were inherited? Which patterns do I keep repeating because they are familiar, not because they are true? Which identities have I worn simply because they helped me survive a world that did not know how to read my frequency? These questions do not create awakening. They reveal it. There is one more thing about this frequency that almost no transmission has ever addressed directly. Distortion is often maintained by loyalty. Loyalty to family pain. Loyalty to old versions of yourself. Loyalty to suffering that once gave you belonging. And until this is seen clearly, many star seeds keep recycling densities they have already outgrown. This is why release can feel emotional. Not because you are losing something essential, but because you are ending agreements that were built in eras of lesser awareness. In practice, this may mean stepping back from conversations that leave you diminished. It may mean refusing to define yourself by your most wounded season. It may mean allowing your body to rest without guilt. It may mean no longer translating your inner knowing into language designed to make other people comfortable. The Pleiadian understanding is simple here. Your original signal does not need to be invented. It needs to be uncovered. Beneath the layers, the broadcast remains intact. Beneath the performance, the mission remains intact. Beneath the fatigue, the inner architecture remains intact. Distortion can cloud transmission, but it cannot erase what source encoded. And this is why your sensitivity matters. It is not merely emotional depth. It is diagnostic intelligence. It is your system showing you where alignment ends and imitation begins. It is the sacred instrument through which your field learns to discriminate between resonance and interference. Once you stop treating sensitivity as weakness, it becomes one of the most precise tools of remembrance you possess. The process begins gently. You notice what drains you. You notice what nourishes you. You notice how truth feels in the body compared to performance. You notice that some parts of your life were built from contraction, not devotion. These recognitions may seem small, but they are foundational. Each one pulls static from the channel. Each one restores clarity to the receiver. Each one tells the field, we are no longer willing to organize life around false frequencies. The Pleiadians don't call everyone. They call those who are ready. If these words found you today, that's not the algorithm, that's alignment. 3,800 souls have already unlocked their Pleiadian keys and finally remembered why they came to Earth. The 9 Secret Keys of Pleiadian Awakening is a powerful ebook that carries ancient techniques for conscious expansion, multi-dimensional alignment, and mission remembrance. The question isn't whether you're ready. The question is, will you answer the call? First pinned comment. This transmission won't stay open forever. And when the veil begins to thin, a second realization emerges with unexpected force. The signal beneath the distortion was never silent. It was waiting for you to become quiet enough to hear it. What comes next in this transmission carries the deepest layer of Pleiadian light codes. Many starseeds expect mission to arrive as a clean revelation, a bright moment of instant certainty, a direct inner announcement that explains everything at once. But in the Pleiadian understanding, mission often arrives first as pressure. Before it becomes language, it becomes intensity. Before it becomes direction, it becomes discomfort. Before it becomes outer action, it becomes an inner demand that you can no longer continue living below the level of truth your soul now requires. As the Pleiadians transmit, mission is not only what you do, it is what your field stabilizes. It is what your presence changes. It is the coherence you carry into rooms, conversations, timelines, and choices. This is why mission activation can feel overwhelming at first. It is not because you are failing to understand it. It is because your whole system is being asked to reorganize around it. Consider Maya, who spent years trying to find the right path. She changed jobs, studied different modalities, followed every meaningful sign, and still felt incomplete. What she did not realize was that she was searching for mission in roles rather than in resonance. Then came a season when everything that once distracted her stopped working. Entertainment felt empty. Social circles felt thin. Productivity no longer gave the same reward. She felt pressure in her chest almost daily, as if something inside her was insisting on a deeper life. At first, she called it burnout. Then she called it confusion. But after months of resisting it, she had a moment of startling clarity. Nothing was wrong with her motivation. Her soul was refusing fragmentation. The pressure was not pathology. It was the compression phase before embodiment. In the Pleiadian understanding, this phase matters because mission cannot be anchored by a self still divided against its own knowing. The pressure comes to expose what remains misaligned. It shows you which habits numb you, which relationships dilute you, which routines keep you busy enough to avoid your own signal. It reveals how much life energy has been trapped in maintenance, performance, people-pleasing, and silent compromise. If this message resonated with you, hit the like button now and tell us in the comments how this echoed in your consciousness. What the Pleiadians have long taught is that mission activation creates heat in the false structures of life. Anything built on fear begins to feel unstable. Anything built on imitation begins to lose vitality. Anything built on self-abandonment becomes harder to sustain. This can be disorienting because from the outside it may look like you are becoming less certain. In reality, you are becoming less available for distortion. And this is where everything you thought you understood about purpose begins to shift. Purpose is not always a task list. Sometimes it is a field state. Sometimes your first service is not teaching, building, or leading. It is becoming internally coherent enough that your presence no longer transmits contradiction. A starseed who is deeply aligned changes more through embodiment than many change through effort. This means mission may begin in the smallest places. In how you regulate your nervous system. In how you stop betraying your intuitive yes and no. In how you bring integrity to your speech. In how you rest when your body asks, instead of overriding it for approval. in how you refuse to feed timelines that require you to abandon your light. These may not look dramatic, but they are foundational. As the Pleiadian Council has shown us, grand service without inner coherence becomes performance. Quiet coherence becomes transmission. There is one more thing about this frequency that almost no transmission has ever addressed directly. Mission pressure increases when your readiness outgrows your excuses. Many beings interpret this as being blocked, when in fact they are being cornered by their own unexpressed truth. The soul begins removing hiding places. The outer world starts reflecting where you are no longer willing to live in halves. This can feel emotional. You may grieve old versions of yourself. You may feel tenderness toward how long you survived instead of lived. You may realize that much of your life was spent becoming acceptable rather than accurate. Let that realization be sacred. It is not there to shame you. It is there to free energy that has been trapped in old identity structures. The Pleiadian path through this pressure is not force. It is devotion. Devotion to what feels clear even when it is small. Devotion to choices that increase signal integrity. Devotion to letting the mission emerge through consistent alignment rather than dramatic urgency. The body cannot carry a stable transmission if the life around it remains built on chronic contradiction. In practical life, this may mean simplifying commitments, speaking truth sooner, ending energetic leaks, creating non-negotiable silence, letting your day reflect what your field is truly preparing for. Mission does not suddenly arrive from outside. It gathers density inside you until you are finally willing to live in a way that can carry it. And once that willingness matures, another threshold opens. The question is no longer, what am I meant to do? The question becomes, what must I become stable enough to hold? What comes next in this transmission carries the deepest layer of Pleiadian light codes. One of the great misunderstandings on the spiritual path is the idea that awakening is meant to take you away from human life. But in the Pleiadian understanding, true awakening does not remove you from Earth. It makes you more available to embody higher consciousness within Earth. The mission is not escape. The mission is integration. It is the sacred act of allowing vast awareness to enter ordinary choices, ordinary conversations, ordinary responsibilities, and ordinary moments until nothing in your life remains separate from your deeper field. As the Pleiadians transmit, many starseeds have touched expanded states, moments of profound connection, dreams, visions, frequencies, silent knowing. But touching a higher state is not the same as anchoring it. Anchoring happens when what you access in stillness can remain present in traffic, in family tension, in work, in uncertainty, in decision-making, in the body, in time, in relationship. This is the mature phase of awakening. Not the pursuit of peaks, but the cultivation of stability. Think of a woman named Leora, who had beautiful spiritual experiences for years. She meditated deeply, received insights, and often felt close to the Pleiadian field. Yet in daily life, she still collapsed into old reactions, overextended herself, and abandoned her needs to keep peace. She began to notice the painful contrast between what she could access in sacred moments and what she could sustain in ordinary ones. At first, this made her feel fraudulent. But then, through a season of patient self-observation, she understood the real lesson. She was not being asked to seek more elevated moments. She was being asked to bring the frequency she already knew into the places where she usually forgot it. Her awakening deepened not when she touched more light, but when she stopped leaving it behind in daily life. The Pleiadian Council has shown us that integration is the bridge between remembrance and service. Without integration, spiritual insight remains beautiful but unstable. With integration, even simple actions become carriers of frequency. How you respond to stress becomes transmission. How you hold your body becomes transmission. How you speak truth without aggression becomes transmission. How you protect your energy without closing your heart becomes transmission. Are these truths expanding your perspective? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this. In the Pleiadian understanding, embodiment requires rhythm. Your system needs repetition, not only revelation. It needs coherent daily structures that tell the body it is safe to hold more light. This is why ordinary practices matter so much. Silence before noise, breath before reaction, hydration before depletion, truthful speech before resentment, rest before collapse, solitude before overexposure, beauty before numbness. None of these are small. Each one is an instruction to the nervous system and the energetic field. We are becoming compatible with higher consciousness in lived form. And this is where everything begins to shift in a practical way. You stop asking only how to feel connected and start asking how to remain connected while living. That question changes everything. Because then, spirituality is no longer an isolated activity. It becomes architecture. It shapes how you structure your schedule, what you consume, what you tolerate, what you commit to, and how quickly you return to yourself when the outer world pulls at your signal. There is one more thing about this frequency that almost no transmission has ever addressed directly. Many starseeds are not exhausted because they lack energy. They are exhausted because their daily life is incompatible with the consciousness they are trying to anchor. Their body is doing the labor of translating high signal through low-integrity environments. This creates friction, confusion, and depletion. The answer is not self-blame. The answer is redesign. As the Pleiadians transmit, redesign begins with honesty. Which parts of your day consistently disturb your field? Which people require you to shrink your accuracy? Which habits keep your body too overstimulated to hear the soul clearly? Which obligations are real, and which ones are inherited performances of worthiness? The more honestly you answer, the more gracefully integration begins. This is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming permeable to your own truth. Some days the anchoring will feel natural. Other days it will feel like choosing yourself in 10 quiet ways that no one else sees. That still counts. The body learns through repetition. The field strengthens through consistency. And slowly, what once felt like effort becomes your new baseline. The Pleiadian path is not built on rejecting the human experience. It is built on illuminating it, eating with presence, speaking with intention, working without abandoning your inner rhythm, resting without guilt, loving without energetic confusion, listening before reacting, returning to your body again and again until it becomes a trusted home for consciousness rather than a place you leave when life intensifies. When this integration deepens, something beautiful occurs. Awakening stops feeling fragile. Your signal stops depending on ideal conditions. You begin carrying your light into the ordinary without losing its clarity. And that is when service becomes real, not because you are performing spirituality, but because you are inhabiting it. And once higher consciousness starts taking root in daily life, the next phase emerges naturally. Your field begins affecting the world around you in ways you may not yet fully understand. Stay with this, because what follows activates the part of you that has been waiting the longest. One of the most tender wounds many starseeds carry is the belief that they are late. Late to awaken, late to embody, late to understand their path, late to create what they came here to create. But in the Pleiadian understanding, this belief usually arises when the human mind tries to measure a multidimensional process with linear expectations. Awakening is not delayed because it does not match the timeline of personality. It unfolds according to signal readiness, field conditions, planetary timing, and the soul's deeper architecture of impact. As the Pleiadians transmit, synchronicity is not random magic. It is evidence of increasing coherence between your inner field and the larger intelligence in which you live. When your choices begin aligning with truth, the outer world often responds with precision. You meet someone at the exact moment you needed confirmation. You hear the phrase that unlocks a months-long confusion, A door closes and reveals why it could never have held your next frequency. An inner nudge you nearly ignored turns out to be the turning point of an entire season. These moments feel mystical because they are meaningful, but their deeper function is not entertainment. It is trust calibration. Consider Nira, who spent years believing life was working against her. Opportunities dissolved, plans changed, relationships ended just when she thought stability was near. She interpreted each disruption as proof that she had failed some invisible test. But after a powerful season of inner refinement, something changed. Instead of fighting every shift, she began listening for pattern. She noticed that every painful ending had removed her from a lower timeline attachment. Every delay had preserved energy for a more aligned chapter. Every silence had forced her inward until her own signal became louder than external noise. One evening she said aloud, "What if nothing has been against me? What if I have been escorted the whole time?" That sentence changed her life, not because it solved everything instantly, but because it returned her to trust. The Pleiadians don't call everyone. They call those who are ready. If these words found you today, that's not the algorithm. That's alignment. 3,800 souls have already unlocked their Pleiadian keys and finally remembered why they came to Earth. The 9 Secret Keys of Pleiadian Awakening is a powerful ebook that carries ancient techniques for conscious expansion, multidimensional alignment, and mission remembrance. The question isn't whether you're ready. The question is, will you answer the call? First pinned comment. This transmission won't stay open forever. This is where everything begins to soften. Because trust is not passivity. In the Pleiadian understanding, trust is accurate participation with a reality larger than fear. It is the willingness to act clearly without demanding control over every detail. It is the ability to keep moving with integrity even when the full map has not yet appeared. The body relaxes differently inside trust. The mind stops consuming itself with proving. The heart becomes more receptive to guidance because it is no longer braced against life. There is one more thing about this frequency that almost no transmission has ever addressed directly. Many starseeds ask for signs, but what they truly need is interpretation. Signs are everywhere. Synchronicities are constant. But without inner stillness, the mind either dismisses them or uses them compulsively. The Pleiadian path is not to become obsessed with signs. It is to become coherent enough to read them without distortion. As the Pleiadian Council has shown us, trust grows through evidence gathered in the body. You begin noticing that your clearest choices leave less residue. You see that forced paths drain you faster. You notice that when you override intuition, the field tightens. When you honor it, even difficult decisions carry peace. This is not fantasy. It is energetic literacy. The universe communicates constantly, but it often does so through resonance rather than language. In practical terms, returning to trust may mean ending your addiction to urgency. It may mean allowing unanswered questions to breathe without turning them into self-judgment. It may mean recognizing that clarity often arrives after alignment, not before it. It may mean releasing timelines that were built by fear and becoming available for those built by truth. The deeper the trust, the less aggressively you push life to explain itself on your preferred schedule. What the Pleiadians have long taught is that mission unfolds through relationship with timing, not domination of it. A door opening too early can damage the nervous system. A revelation arriving before the body is ready can fragment rather than empower. Delay is not always denial. Sometimes it is energetic mercy. Sometimes it is field preparation. Sometimes it is the sacred interval in which the being becomes capable of holding what it once only desired. So if you are in a season of waiting, do not assume nothing is happening. Some of the most important parts of your path mature underground. Roots grow before fruit. Signal strengthens before invitation. The unseen phase is not empty. It is intelligent. And when trust returns, the final phase becomes possible. You stop seeking your mission as something separate from you and begin living as the embodiment of what was encoded from the beginning. Stay with this, because what follows activates the part of you that has been waiting the longest. At the deepest level, remembrance is not complete when you understand your origin, decode your patterns, sense your mission, or even trust your timing. Remembrance becomes complete when you embody the frequency you came to restore. This is the final turning point. No longer relating to awakening as something that happens to you, but as something you become responsible for carrying. In the Pleiadian understanding, embodiment is the moment your life itself becomes the message. As the Pleiadians transmit, the Earth does not only need informed beings, it needs embodied ones. It needs those who can carry light without theatrics, truth without rigidity, compassion without collapse, and clarity without superiority. It needs those who no longer wait for a perfect role in order to begin transmitting what they already know in their cells. Your mission was never only a future event. It has always been a frequency asking for form. Consider Erin, who spent years searching for a single grand assignment that would finally confirm her path. She imagined mission as a dramatic arrival, a moment when everything aligned and her place in the world became unmistakable. But what changed her was not one extraordinary event. It was a season of repeated devotion. She began rising differently, speaking more honestly, choosing relationships that honored her field, releasing work that fragmented her energy, trusting the subtle instructions of her body. Over time, she noticed something undeniable. Peace was increasing, intuition was clarifying, and people around her were changing in response to her presence. One day, she realized the truth she had overlooked for years. Her mission had not been absent. It had been waiting for embodiment. She was not meant to find it. She was meant to become it. This is where everything finally converges. The Pleiadian Council has shown us that embodiment is not perfection. It is consistency of resonance. It is when your values, energy, speech, choices, and care for your body begin moving in the same direction. It is when the gap narrows between what you know in sacred moments and how you live in ordinary ones. It is when you stop asking life for constant reassurance and instead offer your field as a clear, stable vessel for what Source already placed within you. In the Pleiadian understanding, this embodiment affects everything. The body feels different when it is no longer carrying chronic contradiction. Relationships become clearer when your signal stops negotiating with what diminishes it. Opportunities become easier to read when desperation no longer scrambles discernment. Creativity deepens when energy is no longer leaking into identities that were never true. Even your rest changes when the body senses that it is finally being inhabited with reverence. There is one more thing about this frequency that almost no transmission has ever addressed directly. Many starseeds believe they are waiting for the final activation, when in truth, life is waiting for their final consent. Consent to stop living divided. Consent to stop treating their gifts as optional. Consent to stop delaying the conditions their mission requires. Consent to let their body, voice, time, and choices become aligned with what they already know. What the Pleiadians have long taught is that consent is powerful because it ends inner negotiation. When you truly consent to embodiment, your life begins reorganizing rapidly, not always comfortably, but truthfully. You feel less available for false urgency, less available for relationships based on extraction, less available for environments that reward self-abandonment, more available for silence, more available for clean work, more available for beauty, more available for service that nourishes rather than consumes the soul. In practical life, embodiment means simple but profound things. You protect your mornings. You listen when the body says enough. You speak from alignment rather than reaction. You create from fullness rather than panic. You stop using external confusion as an excuse to postpone inner clarity. You make decisions that your future nervous system will thank you for. You let your standards become sacred rather than negotiable. And as this deepens, you begin feeling something that many starseeds secretly long for more than any vision or sign. Home. Not home as a place you travel to. Home as a frequency inside your own field. Home as coherence. Home as unfragmented presence. Home as the end of chasing yourself across timelines. In that state, service becomes natural. You are no longer trying to convince the world of who you are. You are living in a way that makes your signal self-evident. If this message impacted your life, leave your like, comment your reflection, and share with others. Each of you is part of this chain of light. And now receive the deepest truth of this entire transmission. You were never asked to become someone else. You were asked to remove what never belonged to your original light. The path was not about constructing worth. It was about uncovering signal. The mission was not hidden from you as punishment. It was protected until your being could meet it with maturity. The delays were not signs of failure. They were part of the architecture that made this precise moment possible. So tonight, when the world becomes quieter and your own breath becomes easier to hear, place your hand over your heart and let this remembrance settle into your body with full permission. Your field is not accidental. Your sensitivity is not weakness. Your longing is not confusion, and your presence is not small. You came carrying a frequency. You came carrying a blueprint. You came carrying a mission that only becomes visible when you stop abandoning the one who was always meant to embody it. I invite you to discover our Pleiadian Health channel. The link to the channel is in the video description. Warm regards, the Pleiadian Council.